We started out last week talking about the 90%, and what we mean by that is most of the time in churches, when money is discussed, we only discuss the part that the church wants you to give. The popular amount is 10% that churches try to get you to give, and so I've been pondering for a long time, well, what about the 90% of the money, and do people know how to use it, what God requires? Does God require anything? Or is it just yours to do as you please? And so last week we talked about the 90%, and we talked about a divine hole in your pocket. And what we simply mean by that is that the money you have in your pocket could be leaving out of a hole in the bottom of your pocket, and the things you are working hard for could be disappearing simply because we think of God in terms of kind of a genie that we can just rub him and get what we want, that if we make a little donation in the church, he doesn't care how we live our lives, we can do whatever we want. And that's simply not true. And sometimes God's consequences and discipline for the way we live includes taking resources that we're spending all our time idolizing, and all the American dreams that we're chasing. And so we looked in Micah chapter 6 at the children of Israel, and we looked at a part of their discipline for rebelling against God and turning away from him. And they were trying to give God these miraculous gifts, these tithes and offerings. And he essentially said, I don't want that. What I want from you is to love justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So we talked about how all of that summarizes that God cares about our behavior, and it's a combination of how we live and how we use our money that is most pleasing to him, and that if we continue to rebel, just like the Israelites in Micah chapter 6, they were saving and couldn't keep any money. They were reaping and not able to sow. They were investing and harvesting, but nothing was coming of it because God had put a divine hole in their pocket and refused to allow their efforts to prosper until he turned their eyes towards him. And so the question I have for us this morning, what gives God the right to do that in the first place? Who is he to say that he can give us financial consequences based on how we live? And the reason I believe that God can do that is because he owns everything, and we are simply, what I want to title this morning, divine middle management. That's what me and you are. We are divine middle management. But let's look at this first idea. So your first point, if you want to write this down and keep this straight in your head, is God owns everything. All right, so we're going to be looking around in our Bibles this morning. We're going to be finding these nuggets, but I just want to take you to two passages. The first one is Psalm 24, verse 1. Psalm 24, verse 1. We're going to be looking at the CSB, but Psalm 24, 1 says, the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants, belong to the Lord. I grew up in the Baptist church, and I believe that good King James Version says, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, and all that dwell therein. And so this idea from Psalms 21 is simply trying to elevate for us God's role in creation, that he owns everything, that nothing belongs to us. And we tend to think because we get up and go to work every day, because we get a paycheck and a bank account that has our name on it, that you can put a car in your name, a house in your name, that makes you the owner. And God says the exact opposite. He owns it all, that it belongs to you. And not only does all of creation belong to him, we do as well. He says all its inhabitants. including you and I. And so this idea that you and I can do whatever it is that we want with the things in our possession is a lie. And it is a rabbit hole of lies that will lead you to all types of problems. It could be things as simple as not being generous. You know, when you think stuff belongs to you, you say it's mine, I want to keep it. And so you could be led towards not being generous. You could also be led towards placing your comfort and your hope in stuff because you think it belongs to you. And so you could become like that little alien thing in the Lord of the Rings. You remember when he kept talking about my little precious, right? And you could see the idolatry bubbling up in his eyes because he was overwhelmed with that possession. Well, that could be us with our stuff. And God wants to remind us this morning that everything belongs to him. I want to take you to one more passage to see this idea. I love this. It's found in 1 Chronicles 29. And I love this for a couple of reasons, verses 11 through 14. I love it because it's David's prayer, all right? And you don't always think about David in the book of 1 Chronicles, but he's there because Chronicles details the lives of the kings and the life of Israel and things that happens. You know, Chronicles is kind of like the Daily Chronicles. You ever heard that before? When the news gives you what happened, well, this is the Old Testament newspaper, so to speak. And in here, I love it because in the first 10 verses that we're not going to read, what you have is an overwhelming outflow of generosity from the children of Israel because David had made it up in his mind they're going to build God a temple, and he leads the way by being generous and just giving an enormous, ridiculous amount of money. And then right after he does that, the leaders of Israel see him being generous and they decide we're going to be generous as well. And so they accumulate this amount of money I did not even try to take the time to calculate. The Bible says it were literally tons of gold that they collected. But in this section, David begins to pray. And listen to David's words in verse 11. He says, "Yours, Lord, is the greatness and power and glory and splendor and majesty, for everything in the heavens and on earth belong to you. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom, and you are exalted as head over all. Riches and honor come from you, and you are the ruler of everything. Power and might are in your hands, and it is in your hand to make great and to give strength to all. Now, therefore, our God, we give you thanks and praise your glorious name." And then he says in verse 14, "But who am I and who are my people that you should be able to give, that we should be able to give as generously as this? For everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand." You see, David didn't pat himself on the back because he gave a large donation. He asks in verse 14, he says, "Lord, who am I? And who are my people that you would bless us and allow us to give to you?" And then he says, "Because all that we gave you is yours in the first place." And so David understood that whatever prosperity he found in his life, he found by the hands of a gracious God. Another reason this ought to give us comfort is, if you and I are connected to the God who owns all things, we don't need to worry about lacking anything. That if it all belongs to God, and you and I believe that we are his children, then we don't have to go through life wondering what is going to happen to us. I don't think we all believe that. Some of us believe in our souls, regardless of what comes out of our mouth, regardless of what we sing, that it all depends on us. God bless you. If you're trying to go through this life as hard as it is, thinking that everything depends on you and what you can muster up, it is a very unsafe place to be, and it makes God very small. You might as well get you a little statue with no power to worship. Because if God owns everything, then you and I can rest in his hand. The psalmist once says, I used to be young and now I am old. And during this whole time, I have never seen the righteous forsaken. I ain't seen it. And what God is trying to say to us is that he wants to take care of us. We can trust him. And regardless of what your bank account says, you are safe in his arms. If you got a lot in that thing, man, you can't put no hope in that. If you got nothing in it, don't put no hope in that either. Don't put your significance in that. You and I belong to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he owns it all. So let's stop trying to hoard it like it belongs to us, and let's stop panicking when we don't have, because the one who we have said we want to give our lives to and worship and follow, he owns everything. You know, if you've been a parent or auntie or uncle, grandparent, you're going to find yourself in this scenario at some point in that journey. Kids going to be playing, and there's going to be a toy. And one of the kids is going to snatch that toy, and they're going to say those divine words, mine. Right? They're going to snatch it and say, this belongs to me. Mine, give me that. And as a parent, a guardian, an aunt, an uncle, you and I are forced with, in that moment, hopefully we ain't too tired to deal with it, do we want to leave them on this path of destruction all by themselves, or do we want to help them out? Let me tell you what happens at my house when somebody snatch something and say mine. I snatch it. I say, you ain't bought nothing around here. Nothing belongs to you. And the same is true in our walk with God. Man, we don't own nothing. God will snatch it from us when we try to hold it tight and say, it's mine. That divine hole in your pocket last week is because God ain't about to be arguing with creation over who his stuff belongs to. So let's save ourselves the heartache and pain of trying to take and say mine. Let's save ourselves the heartache and pain of trying to rest our hope in stuff. Let's keep our eyes on God. And let's trust him. And so if this is true, that it all belongs to God, that places you and I, unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, in divine middle management. Now, you know, I know middle management ain't a sexy word, right? If you go out, hang out with the friends, and you say, man, what you do for a living? I'm in middle management. You know, that don't sound good. You want to be the CEO, you know, you want to own something, or you at least want to be in charge. Middle management just sound like, hey, man, you just looking over somebody else's stuff. Get your own stuff, right? That's the American dream. That's the way it pushes us. But in God's economy, this is the best place for us to be. Look with me in Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. You see this concept from the very beginning. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. God has created the earth and everything in it. He places man and woman in that. He places Adam in that garden. And it says in verse 15, God took the man and placed him in the garden. And listen to this, to work and watch over it. He placed him in the garden to work and to watch over it. If you were to look at the Hebrew ideas behind this idea of watch, he's basically saying he's the caretaker. He has been left in charge to manage, to watch over, but it doesn't belong to him. God has just created it. And from that place moving forward in all of human history, you and I have been placed in this area of divine middle management. And so that's point number 2, that we are in divine middle management. We are stewards. We are caretakers. We have a responsibility that one day we're going to have to give an account. The boss is coming back, and he wants to know, how did you manage what I left you? And none of us are going to be able to stand before God and say, Lord, I had a grand old time on this piece of dirt you left me on. I did what I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted. That ain't going to cut it, because you in middle management. You know, I just saw some people in Memphis. All right, I saw this article in Memphis where this husband and wife stole $600,000 from a nonprofit. And they went and had themselves a grand old time. They took a vacation to Jamaica. You know what I'm saying? They bought expensive toys and all this stuff. They were paying bills and all these things. And when the owners came and tried to figure out what was going on, now they both locked up. And now they both are facing the consequences of not managing what was left in their care well. Instead of using it how the funds were supposed to be appropriated, they start using the funds for what they felt like suited them best. And the point I'm trying to make is that God is going to come and he's going to look and he wants to know what happened. Jesus brings this up in one of his parables. You can turn with me in Luke chapter 16, verse 10 through 13. So the first thing I want us to know is that God owns it all. The second thing, we're in divine middle management. And this is the second verse on that. Luke chapter 16, verse 10 through 13. And the word says, whoever is faithful with very little, whoever is faithful with very little is also faithful in much, and whoever is unrighteous in very little is also unrighteous in much. So if you have not been faithful, check this out, with worldly wealth, who will trust you with what is genuine? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to someone else, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, since either he will love one and hate the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. What is Jesus trying to say? He's trying to say that in this life, we have a responsibility to be stewards. That God is the divine manager, that one day the master is going to come and take inventory of our lives. Jesus lays forth some very basic principles. Man, if you can't be faithful with a little bit, you're not going to be faithful with a lot. This is how rich people go broke. They were spending all their money when they were poor. And when they got a lot of money, what did they do? Spend all their money. This is why the vast majority of people who win the lottery also go broke and file for bankruptcy. Why? Because they're showing they're not understanding how to be good stewards because they're gambling in the first place. You know, they getting all these scratch-off tickets. You know, it's a divine part of their budget. They want to scratch these things. So if that's how you spending your money before you're rich, you just going to do the same thing when you get some money in your pocket. The amount of money is not the issue most of the time. It's what we do with what we have. And he says if you're faithful with a little, you'll be faithful with a lot. If you're not faithful with a little, you won't be faithful with a lot. So that says whatever situation we find ourselves in right now here today, college students probably like, man, I don't have enough money to be worried about no faithfulness with what little bit I got. But God cares. Take care of what little you have. Be disciplined with what little you have, because one day you're going to get out of college and you're going to get hopefully a little bit better check. And whatever principles you've been living by are going to come to play when you get some more significant amount of money. Also, if you look in here, he says you can't serve two masters. He's trying to impress upon them the reality that there are individuals who want to worship money, idolize money, want to do all that. And God is saying, man, turn to me, worry about me. He's also trying to impress upon them that earthly riches and wealth is not the main thing. He says in here, he says, man, if you can't handle this money, what you going to be able to do with something that's genuine? What about these divine resources that I want to bestow on you? He says, I'm looking for good and faithful stewards. And so that brings me to my last point here this morning that I want to try to make. Is that if God owns it all, you and I are in environmental management, the last point I want to make is we need to take financial planning seriously. And I want you to turn to Proverbs chapter 21, and I'm just going to highlight two verses in here, in Proverbs 21, and then we're going to talk about some of the areas that I believe God is calling us to walk in better faithfulness with our finances. All right, so don't shoot the messenger. And also understand that I'm very convicted this morning that I recognize holes in my own thinking and diligence as it relates to money. So I'm not talking at you, okay? I didn't write these words. I'm feeling the same weight of authority pressing down on me that you feel when you hear these things. So in Proverbs chapter 21, we're going to look at verse 5, and then we're going to look at verse 20. Verse 5 says, check this out, the plans of the diligent certainly lead to profit, but anyone who is reckless certainly becomes poor. What is Proverbs trying to say? He says, man, the plans of the diligent lead to a profit. That first of all, you have to have a plan. So some of us want to say, hey man, God owns it all. We don't need no plan. We just, hey, he owns it all. It's his. We don't need no plan. We just hanging out. If we run out, Terrence said, God owns it all. He going to take care of us. Man, you still need a plan. You know, faith doesn't mean recklessness. Faith doesn't mean that I don't take it serious. No, you need a plan. And then he says the plans of the diligent. You know, some of us good at coming up with a plan, this big grand vision. That's me. But what about them details though? What about the details? What about the diligentness it takes to execute a plan? A plan on a piece of paper with no discipline and diligence is nothing. You might as well have been dreaming in your sleep. Because if there's no diligence behind the plan, it's not going to amount to anything. And so what does he say? He says the plans of the diligent certainly lead to a profit. That when you combine a plan with diligence, you're going to get somewhere. That is what typically happens. Now, I understand there are catastrophes and all those kind of things, right? And I know the writer of Proverbs understands that as well. But 9 times out of 10, when you plan and you are diligent to execute the plan, even if there are pitfalls and shortfalls along the way, a profit is coming if you can hang in there. And then he says in that same verse, but anyone who is reckless certainly becomes poor. He's talking about this idea of not having a plan. The opposite of a plan and discipline and diligence is recklessness. And he says the reckless, if you're reckless with what you have, it's going to go in the other direction. You're going to have less and less. And so what is he encouraging us to do? He's encouraging us to take seriously what God has placed in our possession. To ponder and to ask him, Lord, how do you want me to use this? To come up with a plan and to be disciplined, to try to execute that plan, to critique that plan when it gets off track, when you need to go in a different direction, that's fine. Just do it intentionally with diligence and purpose. And don't be just making it up as you go. Don't be reckless. All right, look at verse 20 in that same chapter. He says, precious treasure and oil are in the dwelling of the wise person. Listen to me, don't say rich person. He says, but in the home of the wise, you're going to find precious things. You're going to find things of value because that's what wisdom and using your resources with wisdom leads to. But then he says that, but a fool consumes them. And that's what I mean by these athletes that go broke, these lottery winners that go broke, people that go broke. It doesn't matter what comes in. If you spend more than you have, you're going to be broke. It works out that way every single time. And so here, I have some practical things for us to consider this morning. The first being, if you got any kind of money at your disposal, any kind of income, and even if you don't, if you have some kind of lump sum or something, you need to come up with a budget. All right, that might as well be a cuss word, right? You know, if you try to do that, if you're married, Lord have mercy, figure this out while you're single, all right? Bless your marriage with a track record of discipline, should the Lord give you one, all right? Because the struggle is real. But a budget, and what do I mean by that? I mean that you're going to take the amount of money that you have and you're going to write down all the places you want that money to go. You're going to consider every single thing you spend money on. And you're going to itemize them. And you're going to give yourself limits of what you need to spend in each category. All right? Unfortunately, that's the easy part. You know, it's like that plan that I just told you about, where you can just dream big. You can say, ooh, I'm going to spend this on this, this on this, this on this. The hard part is to actually do that. And the only way we can actually do that is if we have to actually track the stuff we spend the money on. And that's where I fall short a lot of times. You got to track what you spend the money on. You have to, when you go to that store and you swipe that card, you got to track that stuff. You got to know where you are in your grocery bill. You got to know where you are in your eat out bill. You got to know where you are with the gas, with the power, the electric bill. All these things, you have to know what's going on. And you have to track that spending. I can tell you by way of testimonies, when I have done this most faithfully, I'm often surprised at a couple of things. One, there's always money that's being wasted on things that aren't needed. And it's almost like giving yourself a little raise. When you figure out and you start to really plan out every detail, man, your money is a tool. and each dollar is strategic. Don't let your money happen to you. You need to happen to your money. All right? Don't let your money dictate what's going on. You tell your money where to go and what to do. Because when we don't, we get to the end of the month, we be like, man, what happened? Man, I don't know what happened. And then we get paid again and we do the same thing all over again because we don't have a plan. Or even worse, we get to the end of the month and realize we don't have enough, so then we go borrow some money from somebody else, so we owe them some money. And now we got to add that bill to our budget because we done borrowed and now we got to pay somebody else back. As much as possible, do not be living on no credit card. Do not be going into debt in our basic expenses. If you don't have it, that means you probably don't need it. And if you need it, you got to find another way to get it. You know, we don't have the luxury of the government. You know, unless you got a printer in your closet that can print money, you actually have to live on a budget. Congress can make it up as they go. They got some kind of, I don't know, it almost feels like a divine credit card. They've been charging trillions and trillions of dollars. You and I can't do that. We have to make sure that what we spend aligns with what we have. You know, if we do it differently, the IRS come looking for us. You know, the police come looking for us. Your congressmen, they can do whatever they want. They can just charge it up. But we do it, we get in trouble. And so what is your plan? Do you have a budget? Do you have every single expense that you have written out? Do you know where every single dollar is supposed to go? If you don't, you got homework to do. Do you have a plan for where it's supposed to go? So why is that important? That brings me to the next one. It's important because you do need funds for things like emergencies. You need some type of emergency savings, right? Did you know that I think the ratio is about 70% of Americans cannot pay on their own a $400 emergency. Like if it get over $400, they're going to have to charge it to a credit card. 70% of Americans live that way. And I don't think 70% of Americans live that way because they can't afford it. I think 70% of Americans live that way because we doing the reckless, foolish thing. We spending everything that come in. And we're not setting anything aside. You know, when I took Dave Ramsey, you know, he recommended that you save $1,000 as fast as you can. I'm looking like $1,000? Where am I going to get that from? Dave said, sell some stuff. I was like, oh my God. You want me to do what? Dave said, go sell some stuff. There's all kind of stuff laying around your house you don't need. Sell it. So that when an emergency happens, you can take care of yourself. So if I'm planning and I'm figuring out where every dollar goes, I can hopefully be able to do that. All right? Hopefully I can be able to do that. But if I'm not planning, I'm not going to be able to do that. So when the emergency comes, I'm going to be in worse shape. I'm going to tell you, man, there aren't many feelings that feel better than having an emergency and knowing you got a little money set aside to go take care of it. That's a great feeling. All right? That's what the money is there for. When you hit a roadblock, you're like, hey, man, we only got a strip. We usually have to panic. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? Well, if I got something, I don't have to panic. If I have nothing, I have to panic. And so the point is that we want to be budgeting and we want to have some type of emergency. Another thing I want to bring up here is the idea of retirement. Man, listen, you can't work forever. You just can't. It's physically impossible. And guess what? If you're lucky, you're probably going to live a little longer than you're actually going to be working. How are you going to take care of yourself? And unfortunately, Social Security probably ain't going to be here when the next generation gets old enough to actually need some funds. All right? And we don't live in a world where you can get a job that do these good pension plans like they used to do. All right? You have to take your retirement in your own hands. So I don't care how old you are. You got to be thinking about, man, how am I going to take care of myself when I'm beyond working years? Will I have anything set aside to be able to do that? And I know what you guys are probably thinking, man, this is a lot of information. You got to make a lot of money to be able to do this. I'm so glad. I think it was a few months ago. I'm going to find the article. I'm going to put it in the church group me. The janitor at this high school, I forget where he is, the man is a millionaire. On his own home, got over $1 million in the bank, and he ain't never had no other job but that janitor job. But each and every month he was investing in his retirement, making sure that when his days of working were over, he was going to be able to be all right. He made good financial decisions along the way, and from a janitor's salary, he's going to be all right the rest of his life. And so again, the focus is not always, I got to make more. It's what you're going to have to make some hard choices. You can't be addicted to coffee. Let me go and put that out there. You can't be addicted to coffee. You can't be addicted to Starbucks. You might not get your favorite restaurant all the time. You're going to have to cut some things. Hey, Netflix subscription might have to disappear, you know. ESPN, you might have to be like me, struggling with that little antenna in my house, hoping, Lord, let me get the football game today, please, boy, this antenna. Hey, I'd rather be doing that than trying to figure out how I'm going to make it when I get old. You know what? So what my car ain't brand new? So what it's got some miles on it? So what it don't look like I'm worried about something else. So that's another thing. We can't be up here trying to impress somebody with what you drive and what you got on your feet. You know, I'm going to say this. I can say this because I get tired of my people, black folks. I get tired of us wrapping around the Foot Locker when the Jordans come out. I get tired of it. Hey, every time a new pair drop, you got $200 and some to go get them Jordans. And you don't own one share of Nike? Stop. Make that make sense. How can you afford every pair that come out? Or you got 4 or 5 designer purses, but you don't own one stock behind it? You just making other people money all the time? You ain't worried about your future? You look good, you can take photos, you're getting the likes on Instagram, broke as I don't know what. Who are we trying to impress? Our significance cannot be found in stuff. We are children of the Most High God. He owns it all anyway. He ain't going to love you no better because your outfit match. And don't get me started with the hat, got to match the shirt, got to match the shoes. Who making up these rules and who paying for it? We got to make better decisions. And black people, do y'all know we the #1 consumers in America? We buy more stuff than everybody. And we at the bottom of the totem pole when it come to net worth. So how you spend the most and got the least amount of net worth? You spending it on the wrong stuff. Other people buy assets. We buy liabilities. Assets, what they do, put money in your pocket, liabilities take it out. So keep wrapping around Jordan. He going to be over there cashing them checks. And I can guarantee you he got plenty of Nike stock while you and I stay broke. Hey, man, some of this stuff ain't nobody's fault but ours. Which leads me to the next point. If you're doing your budget, you're doing your emergency fund, you thinking about retirement, you got to have some investments. It's probably true. I know it's true. The cash on hand is not powerful enough to set you up for retirement. It's just not. You know, you heard of that little thing. I'm trying to teach my kids this stuff. Y'all heard of inflation? You might ain't heard the word, but you feel it when you go in the grocery store. When them eggs get to $12 and you like, man, what happened? Inflation happened. Them eggs ain't no better. The chickens ain't no healthier. It's the same chicken from last year, but the egg costs that much more because that's how the economy works. The price of everything goes up and up and up. Man, I remember when I could go in the gas station and buy a candy bar for 89 cents. Like, y'all old enough to remember that? It's too, I'm like, no, man, ain't no way. I just can't convince myself to spend $2.30 on the same Snicker bar that it was 15 years ago. That's what inflation does. The price of things goes up. But you know what goes up the least amount? Your paycheck. The employer don't want to pay you no more. And they're not going to try to keep up with the rate of how much things are moving and the price difference. They don't want to make up that difference. So unless you work for the state, where you're going to get some type of pension, we got to do better. We got some work to do. So the only way your money can keep up and grow at a rate fast enough to keep up with inflation is you got to have some type of investing, all right? And I'm sure there are a lot of ways. And hey, let me say this about investing. Ain't no get-rich-quick schemes. So that ad on your Facebook feed that say click right here and you're going to be rich next week, scroll right on past it. All right? It's a lie up in there somewhere. Real wealth and real investment takes time. Take years and years and years and years and years. And you're going to have to be patient, diligent, stacking a little bit on top of a little bit. All right? So I'm going to just give you two, and maybe people smarter than me know some others. But real estate. Real estate is a really good investment. If you can get your budget situated, if you can get your savings situated, if you can start working on retirement, you might have some spaces in there where you can think about some real estate investing. And hey, if you can't do it by yourself, maybe you can team up with a couple of other people and y'all get started together. But do something. Have it on your mind. We got like 5 or 6 real estate agents right here in our own church. Talk to them about something, all right? Something other than where we're going to spend the next piece of money. Talk to them about some type of investing, all right? And the other one that I'm falling more in love with day by day is the stock market. Man, some of my favorite stocks are very cheap. Do you know you can get a whole share of a stock for $7? Like a good one. Did y'all know that? Or y'all think y'all need this enormous big pot of money? Man, Ford. Some of y'all drove here in a Ford. You can be an owner of the company for $7. Did y'all believe that? And what I mean owner of the company, when you buy a stock, that make you an owner of the company. Them people will literally email you and say, do you want to get on the quarterly call with us as an owner because you have this in your portfolio? They'll ask you that. Now, I don't get on the call. You know, as long as it's going up, I'm fine. You start going down, I'm going to hop on that call. Figure out what y'all got going on. But they invite you to get on the call as a owner for $7. Now, y'all tell how much a Starbucks, I forget the sizes. What's the big one? What's the big size? Grande? Is that the big size? How much a grande drink at Starbucks cost? $9? Oh, my gosh. And people drink that every day? 2 or 3 days a week? $9 a pop? And you can own some stuff? You can own a company for $7? Come on, guys. And so this is my challenge to us. And I'm not going to leave you out here like this. But what I'm saying is that we got to do better. All right? We got to do better. We got to take our resources more seriously. Why? God owns it all. We are middle management. He's coming back to figure out what you did with the stuff he gave, and ain't no excuses. And you can't even say, I ain't know. The pastor just told you. everybody on the sound of my voice, the Lord may replay this for you on that day when you're giving an account for your life and your money. And so it doesn't matter what you did in the past. It doesn't matter how big a financial hole you done dug. It doesn't matter where you are on the totem pole. Today, you can do something different. And here's the beautiful thing about the church, all right? And this is where I want to land the plane. Regardless of what situation you find yourself in, man, we will help you. We will help you, okay? Anybody, I guarantee you, anybody in here that shows me like a legit budget where they got an accounting for every dollar, and they are being disciplined with every dollar, and you ain't got enough at the end of the month, we gonna do something about that. We gonna do something about that. But here what we ain't gonna do. We ain't gonna fund foolishness. So if you wanna do it your way, and you wanna keep doing your way, and people tell you, man, don't do that, and you wanna go do that anyway, we gonna let you go do that. And I'm gonna sleep real good at night. Having tried to help you and tell you, man, make some changes. Because if I help you and when you still doing it your way, what's gonna happen? You're gonna keep doing it your way. And you're gonna miss that hard lesson God trying to teach you. God may be trying to discipline you. You know, it's one thing for an adult to say, a parent to say, don't touch the stove. It's hot. It's another thing to touch that hot stove. That hot stove teach you a lot better than them little words I gave you. So, hey, some of us hard-headed. We need to learn the hard way. Then that's fine. But if you are diligently seeking to manage what you have, to be faithful with what you have, we ain't gonna leave you in that place by yourself. We won't. And we have a track record of adding to people's budget who are doing that and willing to do that. Not to pay for Starbucks, not to pay for net. Hey, we cutting the cable, we cutting the Netflix, we cutting all that. Them got to go first. Because those aren't necessities. All right? Those aren't necessities. But I'm just trying to say there's hope in that. We also have some individuals in here who are budgeting, who are saving for retirement. We got some seniors in here that have walked the whole path. They got retirement figured out. Man, you ain't never asked them, man, how you did that? What decisions you made along the way to help you be in the place you in? They'll tell you. They will tell you. And hey, they might not have all the answers, but what if they got a little piece that you can add to your thing, what you got going on, to get a little bit better? Man, take advantage of that. There are people here who are budgeting, who have retired. There are people here who are investing, and we want to help. And so my encouragement to us today as I bring this to a close is let's take our financial planning seriously. God is concerned with not just the 10%. He's concerned with all of it. And second of all, I think it's like 42% of people who call themselves practicing Christians, people who actually go to church and Bible study and serve, only 42% of them give 10% anyway. So most people don't even give 10%. But I think it has a lot to do with how we manage what we have, what we count as important, and what we discipline ourselves toward, all right? And my last encouragement is, if it's true that God really does own it all, man, you and I don't have nothing to worry about. Jesus says, don't worry about your life, what you're going to eat or drink. If I can take care of the sparrows, I can take care of you too. That's what God said. So any God that's big enough to have birds on their mind, the birds trip me out. When I get out there in that big old yard, I don't know why we got so much grass, but when I cut it, you know what I see? I see the birds swooping down in the low grass, getting all the worms. And I be thinking, y'all jokers ain't did nothing. You ain't jumped on this lawnmower. You ain't pushed this weed eater. But now you going to eat off my hard work. And God says, if I can take care of the birds, I'm going to take care of you too. But to the best of our ability, let's be good stewards of what he's given us. Amen.